This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Welcome to the Spirit Sessions podcast. I'm your guide, Katie Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us where I'll help you find your true spiritual home, where every single aspect of you is holy ground. Holy ground.
This is a journey into sound.
This is a Spirit Session podcast with Katie Silcox. Venga chicos, empezamos.
Hello, beautiful woman. Well, you might be a man, but let's face it, you're probably a woman. If you're a man, hello, beautiful man. We love the fact that you're listening to Spirit Sessions. We welcome you with open arms. Here we are today. It's end of April, guys. Welcome to spring. And I just want to let you guys know that if you are not subscribed to our mailing list, you better get your sweet little booty signed up, because this is a big game change happening over here in the way that we communicate with our listeners and with you all and with the students at the Shakti School. We are really changing the dynamic. And the goal with that is to just continue to offer you guys the tools, the techniques, the technology, the practices, the love, the hopefully upliftment from myself, and if you're a part of the Shakti School, from all of our teachers, in a way that really supports us feeling safe and loved and freaking inspired to live our dreams and our destiny on this planet. That's really what's going on. And the change is that I'm going to be coming to you guys every single week via our newsletter with a short practice. 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. It's going to be a video. So if you're a long time or short time listener to the podcast and you're not on our mailing list, really get on that. Make sure to add our address to your address book so you will get that, because that is how you're going to be able to do the types of practices that we really can't do together on a podcast. Again, all this is totes free. It's just coming through to you in your inbox. So make sure to do that, and if you want to. And it's related to the topic today, which is several things I want to talk about. One is embodied cognition. I know that sounds like a little bit of a lofty term. And also the social nervous system. And curiously, side note, Botox. So we're going to be talking about some super interesting things today. And I'm going to be sending out a newsletter next week. I don't know if we're going to even call it a newsletter. I'm going to be sending you guys some email love that's going to actually be an embodied practice for embodied cognition. So let's talk about that. What is embodied cognition? Well, it's a fancy way of saying, rather than thinking so much of ourselves, so most of us think of ourselves through the gateway of what Freud and the yogis, right, would call the ego. And of course, Freud and the yogis differed on, and even Jung later differed on what they meant by that. But essentially, we can understand the ego as the conscious waking mind and the part of your personality that you're identified with. It's the part of you that you feel comfortable with. It's the part of you that thinks that you kind of got your shit together, or maybe that's terrified that you don't, right? But it's this, the aspects of our being, of our personality, that we feel comfortable kind of interfacing with. And it is a teeny tiny slice of who we actually are. And it's a very top-down approach to living. So what does that mean? It means that we use oftentimes our intellect and our limited memory and our preferred method for viewing reality. And we often impose ourselves, we think we impose ourselves on our bodies, right? And so I think of it as like my history. Many of you know, kind of have a long history in the yoga world. In my former life, I was a cover of the yoga journal, traveling all over the world teaching asana and other things, of course, not just poses, but it was still very much a top-down approach to yoga, meaning I'm going to go into the yoga studio, I'm going to roll out my mat, and I'm going to tell my body what to do, and I'm going to give my mind imagery, and I'm going to, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's a part of our being, right? To be able to do that, and it's really healthy. But when we only use that, we run the risk of becoming, one could say, skewed or imbalanced or even unhealthy. And so embodied cognition is this idea that not only are we sending signals through that more egoic part of our brain downward into our body, but our body is also sending us signals from, for example, our enteric nervous system, so our gut, our belly, our heart. You could even think of it on the chakra level, our sense of safety from the roots, or our attachments, so the second chakra, or our emotions, right? That the body is also moving upward into that cognition realm from below. Ah. And guys, guess what? The stuff that's below the surface is way bigger than the stuff that's above the surface, at least in most people. Ah, that's one of the reasons we do weird shit. And then we go, why am I doing this? Or why did I do that? Right? It's because there's so much going on that we are unaware of. And so embodied cognition is the way, I'll give you one example. One example is like when you walk into a room and you meet someone new and they start to talk to you, you have that kind of egoic interface. It's your persona and their persona are interfacing with one another, and they may say a ton of stuff that you would kind of, with your intellect, kind of like what they're saying, right? But then there's this feeling inside of you, and you watch their facial muscles as they smile. And without knowing this, if you're tuned in a little bit, even if you're not tuned in, you can sense that the smile is fake. Why? Because your embodied cognition is picking up on body language cues and facial movements in their mouth and micro movements in their lips and in their eye muscles, right? Their cheeks. They're watching the flush on their skin. You're watching what they do with their hands. We're seeing 1,000 details in this realm of embodied cognition that we're most of the time, and for most of us, we're completely unaware of it. Cool, right? So it's not that we need to be hyper aware of all of those things. There's a reason they kind of sit below the surface, and there's a reason a lot of the processes in our body are operating within the autonomic nervous system. That means it's automatic. We don't have to really understand it with our intellect to be, engaging with it. You also have this really cool thing that I've been learning a lot about the past few years, and it's one of the reasons why at the Shakti School and in our Ayurveda school, we don't meditate in the normal way that I usually see people approaching mindfulness and meditation and even breath work. We do it in a really different way, and we do it from this understanding of embodiment and embodied cognition, and very much a bottom up approach as well as a top down approach, so that we can find that balance. And so at the Shakti School, I'll teach students how to move around their tongue and their mouth in a way that activates the social nervous system, or pay attention to their structure in a way that brings about a sense of structure and safety in the body, or to pay attention to, where they're sitting and the feeling of the weight of their body and the relationship between their body and the walls around them. We call this orientation. So there's all of these ways that we can really work in an embodied way to meditate that can have deeply profound, impactful, healing results that I have found can be very fast. And so this next email coming up with me, it's going to be called, I don't know, 5 minutes. You're 5 minutes away from being pretty much okay. And maybe it's 10 minutes, and maybe it's 20, or maybe it's 2. But the point is, it's not 20 years, and it's not 5 years, and it's not 10 days of the Vipassana. It's now. Because our body is constantly making the decision whether to be in a relaxed, homeostatic place that I can be engaged and social or antisocial, right? Which is also fine. But we are constantly, rather, let me say it like this. There's always the opportunity to enter into the portal of everything is okayness. It's always available for us because that's how our body works. And yeah, if you've been going through a really rough time for a long time, it can take a little longer. But I've been working with hundreds of, really thousands of people over the past 2 decades, and it is fantastic, in the best sense of that word, to watch the way that when we engage with this embodied cognition, and when we reactivate and re-tonify the vagus complex. What is that? You have a nerve that runs from your brain. It runs through your face. It runs through your tongue and your mouth, all the way down your body. It innervates all of your major organ systems, your heart, your liver, your spleen, your ovaries, your uterus, your testicles. It innervates your entire digestive tract, your stomach. It's the master nerve. And this nerve, when it's properly functioning, tends to have a soothing and calming effect on us. And, it can activate when it needs to. And so we can up level and upgrade and like up regulate, right? We can run and we can digest food, and then we can down regulate, right? We can relax and we can have an orgasm and we can take a nap and we can laugh and we can, most importantly, and really the most important thing that I hope that will come for you and to you out of this podcast today is that when this nerve complex is functioning well, we are able to enhance our ability to listen to other people, to learn new information, to pick up on important social cues, to pick up on emotional nuances within our communications. And that is all a fancy way of saying compassion and empathy. It's the feeling of, I get you. I totally get you. And take a moment to feel that. I want you to feel, Katie Silcox, you may not know me, right? I don't know you maybe, but can you feel me through the podcast, right? Like when I say, I get you, how does that land? And it's true. I do get you. And then to feel like I get me, and the feeling of being gotten by someone else is so profound. The longing for belonging, you guys, the longing for connection, the longing for being seen and to see clearly, the longing for belonging is what unites us to everybody. It doesn't matter your race, your gender, your age, your ethnic background, the language you speak. This is a human universal. So this is deeply important. Deeply important. Now, the vagus nerve links the heart to the muscles of your face. And it is super important in being able to engage empathic responses, and also be able to like mirror neuron people. What does that mean? It means like, oh man, I'm mirroring your facial movements because I get you, and I'm tuning in through that embodied cognition, right? And this is what feels so freaking good. Do you remember that feeling? Have you ever been out on a date and you're like, oh my God, we're totally on the same wavelength? Or maybe you met someone, or maybe you are with your best friend that you haven't seen in a while, or your sister, and you just get deep into this conversation and there's this feeling of release and relief because you feel gotten. That's the ventral vagal complex. That's this vagus nerve activation. Holy Spirit, activate, activate, activate. If you don't know that video, we're going to post it on our Instagram. Okay, so this is so powerful. So we talked about embodied cognition. We've talked about all of us have this social nervous system, and for a number of reasons that can begin at birth or pre-birth, our vagal nerve complex can become compromised, and there's a whole host of downriver costs to this, and that might be a part 2 podcast.
Hey guys, just a quick word from our sponsor. Founded in 2014 by 2 female Ayurvedic practitioners and named after the Sanskrit term for purity, Pavani Ayurveda takes pride in offering pure products that are made of entirely ingredients from the earth. And here's the thing, you all. Everybody in Shakti School is like, what should I put on my food? What spices should I cook with? Well, here's why I love Pavani. They have solved this for you, okay? First of all, their products are 100% earth-based, organic, wild harvested, certified cruelty-free, gluten-free, paraben-free, chemical-free. You know these girls in California. They're going to do it right. So with products packaged in glass, which is massive for me personally, they maintain the integrity of the herbs with labels printed with water-based inks on recycled paper. Guys, Pavani is really serious about protecting Mama Earth and spreading the wisdom of Ayurveda to the modern world. That's why we get a lot of people that want to be ads for our podcast, and we only work with a few, and these girls are one of them. You can check out their offerings on their website at pavaniayurveda.com. We've got all the links in the show notes to that. And they have everything from dosha-specific skincare, abhyanga oils, loose leaf teas, herbal supplements, and neti pots. And here's the big news, and this is why I love them. They've created these new spice blends. And what that means is that you don't have to do the work at home. These women did it for you. There's a kapha, a pitta, and a vata spice blend, and there's a tridoshic spice blend. So you can use those if you know about your Ayurveda dosha to balance your gut. And if you don't, you need to join Shakti School. And, maybe we should do a whole thing about understanding your dosha. That's a really good idea. But in the meantime, here's just a really good practice. This is what I do. I don't really eat for my personal dosha. I eat seasonally. And so right now I'm in Hawaii and it's hot. And so I'm using their Pitta spice blend because Pitta cools and soothes, right? When I go back to Virginia in a month, it's going to be spring. And that's a great time to be working with the kapha dosha. You want to heat it up and purify it. So guys, these spice blends are wonderful, and I can't recommend them enough. All right, more with Pavani in the links, and on to the show.
Why does our ventral vagal complex kind of go haywire, and what can we do to put it back into balance? And we can affect this. I need to take a note. We need to do a whole podcast on ventral vagal complex. But if you're on our newsletter, I'm going to send out a quick 5-minute video on how you can begin to activate the ventral vagal complex to start to soothe and calm your nervous system, but more importantly, to A, feel safe, right? And B, be able to feel gotten and get others. Massively important if we think about the future of our planet and global reality. So, second thing I want to talk about, and you may be thinking, Katie, what are you doing? These two things are not related, but you'll see that they may be. The second thing is something that I came up with this phrase as I was planning for this podcast. And the phrase I want to introduce into the field is natural living fundamentalism. What is natural living fundamentalism? Well, raise your hand out there if you grew up in a fundamentalist Baptist church. Raise your hand if you grew up in any fundamentalist religion, right? Or maybe you grew up with like fundamentalist hippie parents, right? Like you can be fundamentalist about anything. And what does that mean? It means that you're so invested in the rules and rituals that, as one of my mentors, Agora Vimalananda says, you're dressing up a dead corpse with lipstick, right? If we're super invested in the rules and the laws, we miss the whole spirit of why the rules and laws may have been created and the patterns behind which the rules and the laws are created. So I've come up with this phrase. It's called natural living fundamentalism, where we have the whole wellness culture, the yoga world, the mindfulness world, the world of like, how do I want to say this? Like, manifest your reality, and the world of, you know, natural living, right? Natural health, biohacking, all these things. Love it. I'm a part of it. Love all these things. I'm a massive member of these communities. I love natural living. I've created my whole life around it. That's not the problem. The problem that I want to bring up is something I've called natural living fundamentalism, where we get so invested in the rules and laws of whatever it is we're studying, whether it be Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, scientism. What I mean by that is you can be quite scientific about your natural living fundamentalism. And we become so invested in this essentialism of nature that we lose our common sense, and we actually lose, ironically, our good instincts. We actually lose our nature when we become natural living fundamentalists. So you may be thinking, well, what does that look like in everyday life, Katie Silcox? Well, let me tell you. And look, I've definitely been a natural living fundamentalist. We find a lot of natural living fundamentalism in people in their 20s and 30s who haven't really gone through anything massive yet. And there can be this way in which, like, we can over idealize and essentialize nature. I had myself, my little hot little 20-year-old self and 30-year-old self humbled multiple times by life, where I got into situations for whatever karmic entanglement and reason where I couldn't just take turmeric and everything was going to be okay, where I had to rely on the Western medical system. And I am very, very grateful for those acute moments in time. Do I mostly think that the Western medical system is a hot, hot mess? Yep, I do. But I also think that there are hundreds and thousands and millions of people who work in the medical system whose hearts are in the exact right place. And natural living fundamentalism can also show up as an essentialization and an idealization of past historical people or indigenous communities, and essentializing these groups. Like, we see this a lot with Native Americans, right? Like, we can idealize that everything about Native American living was perfected, and then, the white man came in and ruined everything. And while I happen to believe that there's a great reason why we may believe that, but it's still an essentializing of an entirety of a people and of individuals themselves, and it always leads to disappointment. We also can idealize certain natural living time periods, right? And so we can think, oh, look at these ancient Ayurvedic medical healers and people from ancient India 2,000 years ago. And they were just living on the land. They were living so in tune with nature, and they had all of these natural remedies and natural tools. Well, maybe you heard with my podcast with Dr. Harry Adelson, I was sharing with him that Ayurvedic surgeons were some of the first surgeons that we have record of that were cutting people open, right? Not really something that we would consider like, oh, a natural living technique. Like, imagine your next wellness blog is about surgery, right? We forget that people from time immemorial, and I include us, have always been trying to live longer, healthier, happier lives, and they've wanted to be more sexy and more beautiful and more powerful. They have, right? And so, I make the joke at the Shakti School, like, I will never forget this. When I put out the book Healthy, Happy, Sexy, I got a couple of really mean emails from mostly white guys in Marin County, California, which is so funny. And it was like, "Oh, I'm authentically Ayurvedic and you're not, and you're everything wrong with Ayurveda." And I really don't have any charge around it. I find a lot of humor in it now. But at the time, I was like really upset, and it really affected me. And their charge against me was that I promoted the use of Vitamixes and making smoothies. And the more I think about this natural living fundamentalism, the more I think about, man, you know what? I've been to India and I've lived in India long enough to know the women that did Ayurveda and that carried forward Ayurveda, and the men, um, if you would have introduced a Vitamix into their reality 1,000 years ago, they would have really been fascinated by it and probably been very excited to utilize it. It's a great tool. It really is. And guys, I could give so many examples, but I think you get it now. This idea that the past was natural and we aren't natural now, or that nature itself is this only benign force. I've been living in Hawaii doing a deep mentorship for the past 5 months, and I've been doing a lot of far out ocean swimming. And I guess it was a month or so ago, I went out and was with someone else, and I started to swim back in towards the shore, and I couldn't get back. I had read about this, I had heard about this, I knew about this, but I had never experienced this. And that was a very strong countercurrent that was running through the water, that was going very quickly in the exact opposite direction that I wanted to go, which was to the shore. And I'd already done a really long, hour-long swim, and I was really tired. And I started, swimming harder and faster and stronger to try to get out of the current, but I stayed straight. And then I was like, oh, yeah, that's not what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to kind of go to the side. And I went to the side, and it was like it was still happening. It was so scary. It was so scary. And then I got scared. And I went into that place that, of course, I'd read about, heard about, where it's that panic that will get you. And I was able to calm myself down and actually just kind of float and relax for a little while. And then I was finally able to swim enough to the side, and saw that my friend had gotten through because she also was caught. And I got out of it. My point with all this is nature. Oh my Lord, do I love her and honor her. And I'm so grateful for the way that she pulls me down into her earth gravity quality. But I respect her in quite a new and different way now that I felt just a tiny taste of how she could kill me off without a lot of thought. Nature, there's a reason why there's an archetype of the dark mother and the black goddess, right? There's a cruelty. This same cruelty can show up in the way in which we judge other people for their life choices and decisions, right? And I just want to put it out there that our community is a place where we welcome women to come and hopefully be a place where they can feel that any of their choices that they choose to make about their lives, their bodies, the makeup that they use, the products that they buy, the foods that they put in their body, the medical decisions that they make, um, the surgical augmentations that they choose to have, the way they choose or often don't choose to have children, that all of those vast spectrums of possibility are honored, you know. That's like such a core value of what I want this podcast to be and our school to be. And I also think it's important to be educated. And one of my core purposes, I think, in this lifetime is to help educate people. And I'm okay at it and hope to be great at it at the end of my life. And I came across this thing, you guys. And I thought, oh shit, this is sort of touchy. But I have to do a podcast about this because this is massive and no one's talking about it. I haven't read about it online, I haven't seen it, and it's massive. And what is that? That is the relationship between everything I was just speaking of before, which is your social nervous system and that embodied cognition, and just how important that is in human relationships. Not only how we relate to other people, but how we feel related to, and therefore, you know, on the sort of attachment level, like how we see ourselves nested within the greater context of our families or our communities or our world. And Botox. Yeah, there's a relationship between these two things. I know, it's wild. So I'm sure all of you guys are familiar with Botox. But before I go into it, I just want to make it super clear. We have students in our school that have, I'm sure, done Botox. Some of my best friends use Botox. Some of my family members do Botox. Some of my favorite people in the world, I'm thinking of someone in particular, uses Botox. And I love these people with all my heart, right? And I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to put this out there. And so this isn't in no way an attempt at shaming anyone or partaking in natural living fundamentalism. This is purely pragmatic and scientific. So, um, and on that note, like, keep in mind, like, women in Egypt and India and all over Europe and the Middle East and globally, right? Women have been doing, and men, but especially women, we've been doing things to our bodies to beautify ourselves since time immemorial. Like, this isn't the problem. But Botox is this, obviously, injection of a neurotoxic medication that has the effect of removing the appearance of wrinkles and plumping up things. And that may be something else. I don't know too much about the exactness of Botox itself. But what blew my mind is that there has been a recent study published in the Aesthetic Surgery Journal, um, that found that they did research on the spontaneous facial expressions before and after Botox injections on these corrugator muscles. Those that are the muscles that are like those vertical lines between your eyebrows, seen when you have tons of different emotions. So I didn't know that. Yeah, like there are these teeny tiny emotions in right in between your eyebrows and your eye creases, which is where we get crow's feet, and around our lips and mouth, which is that smile line. Um, so there are these really important areas that are the way that human beings enter into an embodied recognition of the emotions of other people. So it's like a super important place, and makes sense. This is where we're getting the Botox, because those wrinkles come because we've been using those muscles to express, and not only express our emotions, guys, get this is going to blow your mind. When you feel the emotion, those muscles have already engaged. Okay, that's going to make sense in a moment. So what they found was that Botox did affect the way that other people perceived your emotions, right? We all kind of know that. Like if someone gets a lot of Botox or like a bad Botox, their face doesn't move, so we don't know what they're thinking. And everyone kind of maybe knew that. But here's what's really important about the study. Not only did it affect the way others perceived the person's emotion that had the Botox, but it also impacted the emotional experience internally of the person who had the injections. I mean, how is this not on the front page of news? So in these studies, this was coming back that people were reporting they had lower self-reported emotional responses to emotional videos they showed them. It was suggesting that our facial expressions, which no big surprise, not only convey our emotional experience, but they affect how we feel about life. You guys, this is massive. So there's another study that looked at this, and we'll put the link to these studies in the show notes, but they had the subjects put a pin in between their teeth, and so it activated these muscles, these kind of micro muscles responsible for smiling, and they showed them some silly cartoon type thing. And then they did it on people that after they had the Botox, and what they found was that it totally changed their experience of whether or not the cartoon was funny, you guys. Another study showed that injection in those important micromuscles of the face area led to lowered activation of key brain emotional centers. So when they were looking at pictures of anger, they were less likely to pick up on that. And so these studies just really support the fact that these micromusculatures are super important for not only seeing other people's moods, but regulating our own mood states. And that may explain some of the success that has been seen with the use of Botox for the treatment of depression, right? And so it's like, oh wow, like if I have over emotion, this is shutting it down, but that's just the same as taking antidepressant. It might be a good, band-aid on the remedy, rather on the problem, but over time, it's keeping us from being able to actually feel our own feelings. Super, super interesting stuff. I really just wanted to put that out there because we really need to know this stuff. I have no judgment around people getting injections, doing whatever they want with their body, but they need to have the information, I think, right? Educate ourselves that there is, studies now show, a corresponding alteration in both our emotional expressions and our emotional experiences, and also our interpersonal connections, right? And so given those deep impacts and often lesser considered effects of this stuff, we really want to take this into consideration when we're talking about these treatments. And all the work that we're doing here at the Shakti School is to really help us actually get our social nervous system back online. And another way that we activate the vagal nerve is through that feeling of empathy. And so it goes in both directions. So, this is what I wanted to talk about today. You may be thinking, "Oh my God, I just got Botox. This lady's killing me," right? And it's not that at all, right? It's just that we really here want you to have that information and be empowered around it. And if you resonated with a bunch of that stuff on the first part of this podcast about embodied cognition and the social nervous system, again, I'm going to be doing another podcast on the ventral vagal complex. This is stuff that really does, though, require a lot of seeing, right? And so if you're not on our mailing list, get on it. We're going to send out a video of me showing you guys some simple ways that you can help tonify your vagal nerve, get that rest, digest, social nervous system, differentiation, right? I'm over here, but also connection. I can connect with you because I'm differentiated. That's coming out in the next couple weeks. So make sure that you're on our mailing list. Lastly, guys, I have a couple of really exciting announcements. One is that we have officially opened the door. I know what you're thinking, but you just closed the door. Yeah, we opened the door for 2023. We're already having people calling my team, setting up calls. We already have, I think, 3 or 4 people signed up for 2023. As always, spots will be limited. And so if this has been on your dream board, vision board for the past few years, this is the year to get in 2023. We've opened the doors. And for the month of May, April and May only, we are giving everyone that signs up a free pass to the membership subscriber program, where you get everything. You get all of my audio meditations, all of my videos, and a free live cutting edge workshop with me on Zoom every single month. So that's only happening throughout May. So get in. It's early bird pricing plus a free year of our membership program, in addition to our 300-hour Ayurveda teacher training and lifestyle coaching platform, Ayurveda School. That's opened up. And secondly, in our membership program, it's now $28. That's just bananas. We are going to be doing this month a 2-hour workshop when you get in on dreams. I'm obsessed with dreams right now. I feel like I, through the grace of God, have been given a new portal in my own spiritual life and my own psyche into a realm that was before this time just not, I wasn't ready for it, maybe. I had a lot of other things I was working on and through, and oh my Lord, you guys, dreams are truly this magical place every night where we get a gift from our soul. And I'm going to be teaching on that in our membership program, Spirit Sessions membership. All right, beautiful woman or man, I love you guys. I hope that you feel gotten, heard, seen, despite me not seeing you or hearing you right now. I know that we can connect, right, in that realm of the infinite. And I appreciate you listening, and I hope very much to see you soon.
beautiful.